Hello, friends. Welcome to your asynchronous lesson for Friday, October 16th. Today, our objectives are these two. We will be able to analyze Brent Staples' rhetorical choices to convey his message, and we will be able to continue reading Baldwin and explain how his relationship with his father impacted his worldview. So we're finishing Staples today and then keeping going on James Baldwin, Notes of a Native Son. Your homework is to read and annotate through paragraph 27 in Notes of a Native Son and answer the homework questions about it. So I was able to convert the PDF into a document. So you are reading through paragraph 27 in this document, which is the bottom of page 7. The reading ends here. And you do need to annotate. So whether that's just highlighting key ideas, just putting as little as a summary on each page, right, of important points on each page. Definitely look up the words you don't know and put the definitions in. There are words in here that I had to look up. It's a really tough text, so make sure you are looking up words you don't know and adding those definitions in as part of your annotations. So again, read and annotate through the bottom of page 7. That's paragraph 27. And then there are some homework questions in the October 16th classwork plus fall break homework document that I put up in Google Classroom. So it says fall break homework right there. You're answering these questions. It's just 2 multiple choice and then 1 short answer. So that is your homework. Write that down. Maybe pause for a moment and write that down. Okay, right now though, before we get there, we are going to finish with Brent Staples. So you should have open your classwork document that we started on Wednesday, the October 13th plus or 14th plus 16th classwork document, Unit 2, Lesson 2. And the first thing we're going to do, we're going to just pick up pretty much right where we left off, right? So we analyzed Brent Staples' rhetorical situation. We identified his purpose, right? It's something like this. So you should have something like this for your purpose. He wants his audience to feel more understanding of Black people and change their behavior if they see Black people out in public, right? He wants his audience to see Black people as human beings instead of just threatening, right, or criminals. So that's where we left off. So now we're going to start analyzing his rhetorical strategies and choices. So you have 2 vocab words here, diction and anecdotes. So these are both rhetorical choices that a writer can make in a piece. So diction is the type of word choice that a writer uses. So if we're going back here to our notes slides, diction, the type of word choice a writer uses. So when talking about diction, you have to use an adjective to describe what type of diction the writer is using, right? So you could have formal diction, informal, poetic, harsh, simple, etc. So here's some examples of different types of diction. Right, formal, ensure that you wear the proper attire, right? That's a very formal way of saying something. Informal, you're going to want to wear the right thing. That's a very just like kind of slangy, like not super formal, right? Poetic would be using like very descriptive language, very kind of flowery language. So bright like the sun, colorful as a flower, right? And then harsh would be you're using words that are sort of like stronger in their connotations than other words you could be using. So saying filthy instead of just dirty, shredded instead of ripped, right? Stench instead of smell, assault. So those are all very strong words, right? Harsh words that a writer could use. And then the other one is anecdotes, not antidotes, anecdotes. This is a story from real life. So telling about the one time that my dog ran away, and that's the lesson that I learned is blah, 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 right? So that's an anecdote. It's a story from real life in order to make some kind of point, right? In order to get some kind of message across. So here in your classwork document, you're going to answer these 3 questions, and we're gonna kind of go through them one at a time. So the first question is, what is a rhetorical strategy, logos, pathos, or ethos that Staples uses in his text to convey his message? So remember, logos, we took these notes up here, is appeal to logic. Ethos is making the author seem credible or trustworthy. And pathos is appeal to emotion. We're going to focus on pathos in the Brent Staples piece. This is mostly the strategy that he is using. So I am giving you that answer for question 1. So you're going to write Staples uses pathos in his essay in order to convey his message. And then what you are going to do right now is identify a piece of evidence that highlights this strategy. So where is he trying to evoke some kind of strong emotion in his reader? So you're going to go back into the text. There are a lot of options for this. Where is he using either strong diction, harsh diction, or anecdotes to make his reader feel some kind of strong emotion? So you're going to pause here. You're going to choose a piece of evidence. You're going to paste it into the Edpuzzle answer. And then once we kind of go over some options, you'll put your answer into the classwork document. Okay, so hopefully you chose your evidence. So here are some options if you were struggling. So it was clear that she thought herself the quarry. So quarry is like normally what you would use to describe like an animal being chased, of a mugger, a rapist, or worse, right? So he's using this very harsh diction to describe how other people think of him, which, well, we'll get into the effect on the reader. As a softie who is scarcely able to take a knife to a raw chicken, let alone hold one to a person's throat, I was surprised, embarrassed, and dismayed all at once. Her flight made me feel like an accomplice in tyranny. So tyranny is like a ruler that is ruling with like an iron fist and is very violent and tyrannical, right? So that's some strong wording right there, right? Surprised, embarrassed, dismayed, accomplice in tyranny. There's a vast unnerving gulf between him and other pedestrians. You could talk about drivers hammering down the door locks, right? So he's using this very strong descriptive wording in order to describe how others are reacting to him, right? Where he says they seem to have set their faces on neutral with their purse strap strung across their chest bandolier style, like this, bracing themselves against being tackled, right? This is very strong language. He talks about feeling alienated. So this is all very strong diction, harsh diction that you could talk about, right? I learned to smother the rage I felt at so often being a criminal, rage instead of anger. The other thing you could talk about is the anecdotes that he uses. So where he talks about his friend who was mistaken for a killer, right? He talks about going into a jewelry store and having a huge dog basically like set on him, right? Because the owner thought that he was going to steal something. He was chased through the offices of this magazine he was writing for because he was mistaken for a burglar. So these are all anecdotes that you could talk about for evoking this emotion in the reader, right? So let's go on to the next part. So actually pause here and put whatever evidence you're going to use into this box. So he states, comma, and then put your evidence. And then next, you're going to do question 2. So what specific choice does Staples make to develop this rhetorical strategy? So you're either going to talk about whatever evidence you chose. You're going to talk about he uses harsh diction to describe blank, or he uses anecdotes to express blank, right? So here are your sentence stems for this. He uses to describe, or he uses anecdotes to express, something like that. So go ahead and you're going to pause and put your answer for that based on whatever evidence you chose. You're going to put your answer into the Edpuzzle and then into this document. Okay. And then finally, we always want to think about the impact on the audience, right? So what impact does Staples hope this strategy will have on his audience? Basically, what does he hope his audience will think or feel? And how does he hope his audience will change their behavior, right? What does he want them to do or not do based on this evidence. So for example, if we were talking about this one where he says, I learned to smother the rage I felt at so often being taken for a criminal. You might say something like, he hopes this harsh diction will make his audience understand him as a full human being and how much of an impact this discrimination has on him mentally, something like that. So you're going to pause now. You're going to put your answer for the impact based on your evidence, whatever evidence you chose. You're going to answer that question in the Ed puzzle and then paste it into your classwork document. Okay, so at this point, you should have all three of these boxes filled in. And so that's basically, you just did rhetorical analysis. That is what we just did together, right? We picked a piece of evidence. We picked evidence that we know the author is using to build this strategy, right? And then we looked at specific choices that the author made, right? So whether it's the diction or the anecdotes, there's a lot of other rhetorical choices that we're going to get into with Baldwin. But so that was the second step, right? We identify the specific choice that they made, and then we connect that choice with the purpose, right? So what impact does Staples hope this strategy or choice will have on the audience, right? Always connecting the choice, the rhetorical choice and strategy with the overall purpose of the piece. So now you're going to do that same thing down here underneath independent work. You're going to identify two more pieces of evidence where Staples is developing pathos. So whether that's other examples of the harsh diction that he uses or other examples of anecdotes in his text, you're picking two more pieces of evidence where he is developing pathos and you are analyzing it. So just exactly like we did up here, you're identifying the specific choice that he is using. And then you're describing what impact does he hope this strategy will have on his audience. So you're going to pause the video here. You're going to do this in your classwork document right down here. So picking another piece of evidence and analyzing it, and then one more piece and analyzing it. So pause here and complete that independent work section in your classwork document. Okay, now we're back. And then finally, we're going to go on to the exit ticket. So your exit ticket, you're creating a thesis statement that responds to this prompt. How does Staples use rhetorical strategies to argue his opinion about the role of Black men in public spaces? So just like a literary analysis theme statement, we're only doing one sentence. We are starting with the author's full name and the title of the piece. We're naming a rhetorical strategy and a specific choice. So instead of like a literary device, like we did all through Unit 1, you're talking about rhetorical choices and strategies that they are using. And then we're stating specifically what the author's message is about this question, right? About the role of Black men in public spaces. So what is Brent Staples saying? What is his message? What is his purpose about this topic of Black men in public spaces? So before you do that, let's just look at an example and non-example of a thesis statement. So an exemplar thesis statement, the theme or the thesis is a universal statement. So that means we're not talking about things that specifically happen in the essay, right? So you're not going to say he uses anecdotes to tell about all the times that he has been discriminated against. It's what is the bigger message, right? What is his overall message about this big question in society, right? So this example says marriage can be a trap for women despite societal expectations of them. So that's an exemplar because it's a universal message, right? That's what Kate Chopin is saying about the world as a whole. This one is not quite there because it says to illustrate how Mrs. Mallard was unhappy in her marriage and secretly relieved when her husband died. So we don't want to talk about like stuff that happens in the story. It's based on this story, based on this essay. What is the author's message about the world? Okay, so pause here. I'm going to just have you stamp in the Ed puzzle. What is the difference between these two thesis statements, and what should you make sure to do in your own thesis statement, do or not do. Okay, so now you are going to write your own thesis statement here. So again, one sentence, author's full name and title. So you're going to say something like, in Black Men in Public Space, Brent Staples uses, and then you're going to name the rhetorical choice. So either harsh diction or anecdotes to build pathos in order to convey what is his message or purpose. Okay, so there's your sentence stem. So go ahead and write your exit ticket, write your theme statement, and then we will come back and go on to the Baldwin homework. Okay, so your exit ticket should be done. This whole document should be done. So at this point, you should click Turn In on this document, the Comp 9 Unit 2 Lesson 2 classwork. So pause here, turn this document in. And now we're going to go on to this other classwork document that I put in Google Classroom. So before you kind of answer, I'm going to have you answer some questions, just a few questions about the first few pages that you read. And then you're going to get started on your homework reading and annotation. So before we do that, let's just summarize some key ideas, because I know this is a really dense text, so I kind of wanted to make sure that you guys had sort of grasped the important points in this text. So first key idea, Baldwin's father is really harsh and they do not have a good relationship, right? So if we go into the text, we can see the whole thing starts with he's telling about when his father died, right? And then he says, I had not known my father very well. We had got on badly, partly because we shared in our different fashions the vice of stubborn pride. So they did not have a good relationship. He was kind of harsh with his children, right? It says, when he took one of his children on his knee to play, the child always became fretful and began to cry. There is this unabating tension, right? So his father is not a pleasant man, essentially, is what he's saying in this essay, right? So they do not have a good relationship. And then, however, we kind of discover why his father is this way, right? So he says, when he died, I had been away from home a little over a year. In that year, I had had time to become aware of the meaning of all my father's bitter warnings, had discovered the secret of his proudly pursed lips and rigid carriage. I had discovered the weight of white people in the world, right? So another important point in this first few pages is that James Baldwin, when he goes away from home and he is working in New Jersey, so he originally lived in New York City, and he hadn't really experienced as much like overt discrimination, maybe. Then he was working in New Jersey, and he finally kind of experienced sort of like the racism that his father had been talking about, right? So like he talks about this episode with a white school teacher when he was younger, and he couldn't really understand why his father was like so anti this woman coming into their house. And then finally there was this great change in his life, right? He experiences, I knew about Jim Crow, but I had never experienced it, right? So finally he understands kind of where his father is coming from, like why he's such a bitter person, right? So those are some important points in the first section of that text. So if you just want to copy and paste these notes into your key ideas box there in your classwork document, please do that. Just want to make sure that those important points are kind of central in your mind. That's what you're thinking about as you go through the rest of the text. So now you are going to spend the rest of the period completing this independent work. So you're answering these questions about the pages that you already read. So what happened to him the year before his father's death? We kind of just already went through that. And then these two multiple choice questions. And then this last one is asking you, what is the dread chronic disease that Baldwin contracted living on his own in New Jersey? And how did Baldwin's relationship with his father impact his contraction of the disease? So this is not a literal disease, right? We're talking about a a more figurative disease that he describes. Right, there is not a Negro alive who does not have this rage in his blood. So what is this disease that he contracted while he's living in New Jersey? And then how did his relationship with his father impact his contraction of the disease? So you're going to answer those questions. And then you are going to answer these questions over fall break. So this is due all the way after fall break when we come back that week after. So October 28th is when this is due for you. So you're going to read through paragraph 27, annotate, 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 annotate. You have to. And then answer these 3 questions. So that is all for today. Make sure you have turned in your this classwork, Unit 2, Lesson 2 classwork. And then a couple other just announcements. When you come back from fall break on the 22nd and 23rd, those are asynchronous learning days. So you will have practice classwork and a quiz on pronouns and antecedents when you come back those days for my class. And then makeup work is due for all classes by that Friday at the end of the day. So if you're doing makeup work for my class, you need to send me an email letting me know that you completed those assignments in order for you to get credit for them. I will put these announcements up in Google Classroom as well. So get in contact if you need any help, and I'll try and make the instructions really clear in Google Classroom. And have a wonderful and restful or productive, if you need to be productive, fall break. And I will see you on the other side.